Hey, it's Drybear. PAX East has officially started for the gaming world. We know that on Sunday, the TFD devs are going to have a dev broadcast that will show off a lot of the Season 3 ideas, tease the new Descendant, all that kind of stuff. So we're kind of working our way there. We're closing in on the end of their massive Q&A session with all of their director and dev responses, so we'll continue on with that today. Starting off with a wild take. So the question here is, with the addition of new levels of the reactor, so we used to only be able to upgrade a reactor twice, now we can upgrade a reactor 5 times. With that change, it means that more of the overall power provided by a reactor is now being provided by the upgrade system in general. And oddly enough, I'm not sure how I feel about this specific question, but the asker says, hey, how do we feel about having the correct mount being less impactful than it was before, now that we can get power from so many other places, including a higher scaling upgrade on the reactor itself, which I think is a dangerous question. I don't know. I always feel like the mounting system has just been kind of odd. It is kind of nice to have the right weapon and everything, but like now that we can implant 3 different types of weapons and we can change them on the fly, it becomes a little less relevant and that sort of thing. But the director responds with, we're aware of the issue you mentioned. While skill power is generally increased through reactor enhancement, the additional skill damage from core-specific reactor options has been fixed at level 100. As a result, the value of this option is gradually diminishing over time. Although there are currently many higher priority issues, we consider this a matter that should be addressed in the long term. And to be honest, I don't really see this as an issue currently. I feel like in general, as they add more, secondary, auxiliary, and tertiary systems like Arche Tuning, or, even having the weapon cores in some cases, I feel like they're going to keep adding more power and power. I don't think it needs to be like an ongoing thing where the reactor always needs to be the biggest ipso facto deliverer of power, and if it's not, then we have a crisis on our hands. I think it's just kind of natural. And also, if it feels like people having the right mount and having the right reactor and everything with the right stats is like everything, then I don't know, maybe we just need to look at the secondary systems. But personally, I enjoy having the Arche Tuning system modify, a good amount, right? Like, I actually think the Arche Tuning system was a great addition to the game, unlike the weapon core system. Like, the Arche Tuning just fits really well. It's basically Diablo 4 Paragon, but it I think was a positive effect on the game overall. But let me know what you think about this kind of line of questioning and thinking with the growth of reactors over time and where their overall power contribution sits in the player power equation. Next, it was brought up again, like, hey, can we get some merch? Can I get like a 12-inch figurine of Ultimate Bunny on my desk for reasons I won't get into? Like, can I get maybe like, some cool like hoodies or shirts or plushies or whatever, like, can we get some options for that like are part of the game? Because there are a lot of people that enjoy the game world and the IP and they want to have some merch for it. So the production director responds with, physical merchandise, we're very interested in it too, but everything takes a long time to produce. It really does. No matter what we try to make, back at launch, we were too focused on live service to give it proper attention. So now that we're trying to move forward with it, things aren't moving as quickly as we like. Still, we're actively working on it in various ways. Now, to go along with that, they did post a making of Bunny's cosplay. We saw a little bit of this other day. Unfortunately, they posted on Twitter, which has limited bitrate on it as well. But it kind of just goes through the cosplayer making the Bunny outfit. There is a Bunny and Serena walking around PAX East today, showing off their cool cosplays. And they also did just show like a making of. So, I think that it's pretty interesting. People like love this kind of stuff, especially if they're super into it. And obviously Bunny is their premier like poster child for the game. So it's pretty cool to see this kind of thing come to life. The next question is a wild one. It made the director cry a little bit, but they're just getting unhinged in the Q&A. The question was, what do you think about Viessa? Why is she one of the more ugly Descendants? I couldn't really get the full translation, but they were basically just dogging on her for just not fitting with the rest of the cast and being kind of ugly. And they're like, can you please add some pretty makeup for Viessa and make her look more beautiful? And the director responds with, Viessa is sad, morose, ... a character with a long history and legacy within the dev team. She holds special significance as the original model for the visual quality and style of all female Descendants in the First Descendant. He says, reluctantly, I'll talk to the art team once again about her crying face. Mans is just taking it on the chin. Like, I don't know. I've heard a lot of great feedback about Viessa. There's people that really think she's super attractive. I don't know. But I guess this person was like, hey, I hate Viessa. She's ugly. Can you make her prettier? And can you put out more makeup for her that makes her look prettier? And the director was like, okay, okay. Transitioning from that is a more reasonable question, and one that like very much agree with. The question is just around, hey, can you put more indicators to better represent buffs, bonuses, and especially even in party, like bonuses you're receiving from other players? This is something that they've had a problem with for a long time. They've gotten better about it in some cases, but there are still buffs in the game that you receive from your weapons, your unique abilities, from modules, from skill sets, from transcendent setups and things like that, that just don't have an icon. Like, they actually don't have a timer. There's no representation on whether you have the buff or not. And so managing your uptime and keeping track of things like that is actually like pretty difficult, or in some cases, you're just doing it in your head kind of thing. So the question is, hey, has there been any discussion around making like the indicators for buffs in party window, or some ones that are missing, especially like they're talking about like in a support capacity, like I'm playing, you know, buff Luna or buff Enzo or something. Can I see some uptime on the support buffs, the buffs I'm getting, or the buffs I'm getting? Can we get more indicators on these buffs that we just have no visual indicator or feedback on at all? And the director says the topic has come up frequently in our internal discussions. Buff indicators for support players and display of party members' MP gauges have both been tabled several times. However, the current game structure is centered around DPS-based combat, which has caused these ideas to fall in priority. That said, I fully agree that this information is essential when playing as a support Descendant. Based on our feedback, we'll bring it back to the forefront and reevaluate it internally. They might just be wondering that maybe it's too much noise on the screen to have that stuff showing, or maybe there's just like a limit of how much they want to show, that sort of thing. Or maybe just people haven't been complaining about it enough. They don't think it's that important. But let me know what you think about having indicators for more buffs and bonuses, especially when it comes to buffing other players on screen, so you can actually track them properly. Next, someone was asking about the weapon cores and how to better organize them. They essentially, like word for word, they were saying, can we get a library system for our weapon cores so you can actually search for them, organize them, look at them across different weapons where you have those cores planted, and that sort of thing. Like, can we get a better system for managing and like uploading our weapon cores so we can keep track of them? And the director responds with, we internally reviewed the idea of saving and switching cores and weapon options like a loadout system. So not only just viewing them, but they had talked about doing like actual loadouts. Like even on like the new Arche Tuning system, you have 3 different loadouts you can pick. You can have like things selected that way. So you obviously have more control there, just not on the weapon core. He responds with, however, due to the significant complexity this would introduce to both the system architecture and user experience, we decided to take a different approach. And also conversely, you know, unlike the inversion system or the Arche Tuning system where you're just swapping out an allocated loadout score, in this case you are spending currency and farmed items to permanently apply a core to a weapon. So it is a little bit different and is a lot more progression based and permanent. Now weapon research has been improved to always produce the highest unique grade ability you possess. So they did that so you can make duplicates of weapons and do different cores on them. And once you unlock core slots for a specific weapon, you won't need to repeat the process again. While I previously mentioned during AMA that we would review the loadout system, after evaluating its feasibility, we determined it would be difficult to implement. We appreciate your understanding as we proceed with this alternative solution. So they're basically saying they have no intention of allowing loadout swaps for weapon cores. They want it to be more permanent, built-in, baked-in solution. And if you want to have a different option for that weapon, you can just craft another one and it will be fully, you know, cored out like it was before, and you can swap out the cores on that second version. I think this puts pressure on the inventory system and kind of encourages people to get more inventory slots to keep track of all the extra weapons they're holding on to if they want to min-max. But also to that same point, I think that they do give out, you know, every single week they give out 1 to 3 or 4 free slots, so, or inventory slots. So I guess it kind of gets built in there, and it is free to play accessible. Next is kind of interesting. The question here was related around UI clutter. They're mentioning that the both on the UI itself, like the amount of things that are showing on the the UI setup overlaid over the gameplay, just having too much information, but also the in-world markers as well. So player names running by, map markers when people do like a pointed target or whatever, all of the yellow arrows and items and whatever else. They were saying that, at least in their opinion, that the UI was too cluttered, both in world space and in the overlay. And the director responds with, "Hey, thanks for your feedback. The current UI size was designed with console gameplay in mind, particularly for players sitting on a couch at a distance," which is true. Every developer that makes console games needs to be making the display of the information you read readable at 10 feet. 10 feet is the agreed upon distance from a TV that you'll be sitting for the console. So if you are sitting at about 10 feet away from a 40 to 60 inch TV, or maybe even like 30 plus, something like that, you obviously wouldn't want to do a super small TV, but like 40-inch TV or 50-inch TV at 10 feet away from that TV, you should be able to read anything shown on the screen, and that is the correct way to do it. We agree that offering this is as an adjustable option would allow for more flexibility based on individual preferences and play environments. While it's not an issue we can address in the short term, we are aiming to expand player customization options, and we'll consider this as a long-term improvement. So if you're someone who tends to view the UI and world space clutter of UI elements, text elements, icons, and things like that, it is something that they will be considering after this AMA, this Q&A, but it's not something they're doing, at least in the short term. And from that standpoint as well, if there are complaints or gripes you have with the way the UI is set up, I would try to get them into the next Q&A session if you can, just in case they are actually planning to make any adjustments to that in the future. Next is a super good question, I think, especially going into season 3 as we move forward. So the question is, hey, the arcade tuning system is good, but it doesn't feel like all of the nodes are as useful as some of the others. They mentioned like skill duration increase or things like that. Sometimes the skill power ones, based on where they sit in the arcade tuning / Paragon board, and also based on the amount they provide, they're saying that the balance on the arcade tuning board is not equivalent. And depending on what you need from the arcade tuning board, you might get more or less value back to your build based on that. So the question was, hey, do you guys have plans to rebalance the arcade tuning board to make it so that all the choices feel meaningful or have enough amount on the stat that's provided for it to be useful for more builds? And the response to the director was, given that arcade tuning nodes are currently shared among Descendants, the board doesn't change across any Descendant, it's the exact same board, there are limitations to how much we can improve things under the existing system. Which, by the way, they could also just have, if they're going to make us re-level the arcade tuning for every character, there's not really much reason why they couldn't just give us a slightly altered board for every character if they felt it was necessary, right? Like that, I don't see how that's out of the question in any way. To fully resolve these issues, we would need to move toward a system where each Descendant has their own dedicated nodes. Boom. He was already planning on answering that. However, this would go against our original intent of avoiding power disparities between Descendants through node placement, so we'll proceed cautiously with any changes. We do plan to continue expanding the node system. At the moment, we are taking a conservative approach due to concerns over power inflation, and a full overhaul is under consideration. That said, we'll keep reviewing areas where it's currently difficult to enhance specific stats through nodes, and the upcoming May 22 update, socket nodes will be expanded, and players will be able to equip mutation cells into them. So we're getting basically like the Paragon board glyphs, or like the passive skill tree jewels from Path of Exile, where you'll be able to take these mutation cells and put them in socket options in the arcade tuning board to give you even more power. Now, some of this might be the case, like you could also argue from his perspective that maybe they should just balance the Descendants so that they don't need their own unique board, and if there's a problem with a specific build for a character where even with a good arcade tuning board you can't get good impact, maybe that specific build just needs to be buffed in general, versus trying to make the arcade tuning board different than all the rest. But let me know what you think about this situation for arcade tuning and some of the builds between characters overall. But that's where I'll leave it today. The video was already too long as it is. That is the current setup for responses. Again, we're speeding towards the Sunday delivery, and once we have pictures from PAX East and stuff like that, I'll be sure to share that with you guys as well. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.